Hi, and welcome to Making the Strange, a podcast about how we made our fiction podcast. We will take you along with us in real time while we create our first fiction podcast. I'm Jennifer, the writer and creator of the Strange Chronicles.
And I'm Chris, the producer of the Strange Chronicles, a sci-fi noir detective podcast.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to create the marketing and how to make a fiction podcast. We'll talk about social media, connecting with other podcasters, and advertising.
We'll also discuss a technical mishap that happened along the way. And in our How's the Writing Going segment, Jennifer will discuss how the writing is going.
And finally, we'll provide a podcast tip, something you can use as a strategy for your own podcast.
First, a quick rundown of this podcast and why we are making it.
Yes. Making the Strange is a kind of a way we're chronicling our experience and making a fiction podcast. So it's a little meta, a podcast for a podcast. It's kind of an experiment, so we'll see how it goes and if it can help someone else.
The experiment is partly to keep us on task to make sure we complete the season, and also to share what the experience is like for others who might have an interest in telling a fictional story through a podcast.
Exactly. So if you happen to be one of those people, we'd love to hear from you. Any questions or things you're unsure of pertaining to doing your own podcast, you can email us at info@thestrangechronicles.com, and we'll be sure to include your questions in a future episode.
Yes, we definitely want your questions. We want to be able to answer those. And also, honestly, as you can tell, we've made mistakes along the way. If there's something that we've talked about that you have a better way of doing it, you've done it before, and you have a tip for us, we would love to hear that too, because we are always looking to make the way we do things better.
Okay, and now it's time for our technical magic or mishap. And today it is a mishap. So Chris, tell us the mishap that happened with the tech.
So today's technical mishap was a glitch in running our test marketing campaign. And, we're not sure the best way to market this show. So I wanted to run some tests using this podcast. We had already done a promo for it, and I thought maybe if I could get some hits on that promo and get it out there to some other listeners, maybe they tune into this, and then that would lead to more listeners for the scripted podcast. It was a bit of a test run.
So what was the mishap?
Yeah, so the mishap was I uploaded our podcast to Google Ads, and it started to run, and about 24 hours in, it got pulled. My whole account got deplatformed.
That's pretty big mishap.
Yeah, I got this big scary email from Google that your account has been suspended due to suspicious payment activity.
What?
Yeah. So I'm like, what's suspicious payment activity? Like, you think I paid you in a weird way?
Wait,
like,
this should be an episode.
All you do is have my credit card. How is that suspicious?
Oh my gosh, that's like for the Strange Chronicles, we need to have the suspicious credit card.
So, yeah, I looked into it a bit, and it turns out, again, I created a business account to run the ad through. So the account name was Kings of Content.
Right.
And even though that's what it says on my credit card as our business name, it also has my real name as the name to bill. So Google, if the account name and the credit card name don't match exactly, they think that's a fraudulent payment. Like, I don't know if they think it's a stolen credit card or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So they just boom, automatically, and they don't ask you about it first. They just shut you down.
Okay.
And then you have to file an appeal.
Oh, geez.
And they may or may not hear your appeal.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So what I did was, when I found that out, I went in, I changed the account name to my real name temporarily.
Okay.
Then I submitted my appeal, explained to them what happened, and within 24 hours, they responded and reactivated my account, and the ad was back up and running again.
Okay. Awesome.
But, yeah. So just another thing until...
Just make sure all of your things match.
Yeah.
Again, everything has to be really specific.
Yeah. Even if you have a business account and you think setting it up under your business name is the way to do it, sometimes it's not.
Good to know.
Yeah.
See, guys, we're just going to go through all these mess ups for you. Hopefully, we can help you avoid getting deplatformed from Google. But then at least we got reinstated,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, we are going to discuss how the writing is going. So, Jen, how is the writing going today?
Okay, so I was struggling a little bit with some of the mystery elements of the stories. I do have them planned, but I did not even outline the next episode. So my verdict on the writing this time is very poor. Muy mal.
So not so awesome. Next up, we're going to discuss the marketing.
Yes, this is the marketing episode, a thing we are not great at.
Let's start with the social media.
Yes, social media. We do not use social media personally, so we understand that it's important for the business. So we definitely have started partaking in the social media. For the podcast, we have a Twitter and an Instagram for each podcast.
Yes, and we have the YouTube channel.
That's right. And we're slowly but surely, I think we're so focused on the creative and the post of the creative right now that it's really hard to really delve into the marketing until we have all of it finished. I think then we'll be able to focus on the marketing more. So from this perspective, I would say that if you're making a fiction podcast, you might want to plan out some of the marketing before you even start making episodes. I know this seems like a lot of work to do before you even press record, but now that we're in it, it's just really hard to market as well as make at the same time.
Yeah, having not been involved in social media for so many years, we didn't have any kind of following, we didn't have any kind of user base, any kind of a network. So
Right.
we're basically starting from scratch, trying to build up an audience from nothing.
Right, exactly. Which a lot of people, when they join into social media for a specific project might have that same issue. But we also just are very green when it comes to how to start. So yeah, the social media is a slow but sure thing, and hopefully we'll slowly start building. We are posting the promo, we're posting when a new episode comes out for making, and hopefully that will build a little bit for the fiction podcast.
Yeah, we tried one thing. I did a promoted tweet to see how that would go, again, as a test. And while it reached a lot of tweeters,
Right? Twitterers.
Well, it reached a lot of people. It didn't spark any real engagement.
No listens, right?
Not that I could tell, no. I mean, there
Goose
were maybe
egg.
I saw about 4 clicks,
Okay.
and maybe we got 20 followers on Twitter
Okay.
and a few retweets and things from random people. But I think most of those followers we got were bots.
Okay.
Because I would go and look and see like, oh, should I follow this person back? And then I would look at the profile and say, absolutely, we cannot be linked to that profile.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too, is we're not trying to get followers or likes. We want people to listen to the podcast. So
Yeah.
we're after actual listening people.
But we also do want to engage in the community too.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like once we have a little more time to focus on that, maybe we'll be able to build that part of our platform. So now let's talk about connecting to other podcasters. That's something we definitely want to do, but haven't done yet. We're still in the research mode, but we think this area actually might be the best way of finding listeners with a similar interest. So as I've said in the past, I'm a huge podcast listener, and I'm really excited to reach out to other podcasters who might be doing the same sort of thing or be interested. So that's kind of, I think that's our next step, is reaching out. We'll see how receptive, I don't know if they get tons of requests for a chat or not. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, especially being an unknown in this medium, is it better to try and reach out to them before the product has launched and say, this is what we're doing, and see if we can gauge interest, or do we wait until the whole thing has been released and then people have hopefully heard it,
Right.
and then we have something to show as an example that they can say, okay, yeah, come on, talk about this.
Yeah, I think for this though, we have a few episodes of making the strange out, and they can listen and kind of hear what we're trying to do, and then maybe they'd be interested in listening to the fiction podcast.
Yeah, I hope so, because my idea of marketing is you do it in advance.
Right?
I know.
You
want to get the
yes.
word out ahead of time and have people come in for the premiere, and you gain those listeners right from the beginning, and you build from there and grow. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
you don't want to start launching into an empty void.
True. But at the same time, someone could always find it later and listen back and binge. I mean, we are a binge society,
Yeah, we are a binge society. We did run an informal Twitter poll, and out of the whopping, 3 responses we got on the Twitter poll, it was like, what is the best way you have found to market your podcast, was the question.
And what was the answer?
And that there was 0% for ads, there was 0% for social media posting, there was 0% for other, but there was 100% for appearing on other podcasts.
Right. Which I think, in my humble opinion, I think that's a great way, because for me, as a podcast listener, that's how I learn about other podcasts. If someone's interviewed on a podcast, I'll look up their podcast. If someone mentions loving a certain podcast, definitely if a friend of mine says, like word of mouth, hey, you should listen to this podcast, I'll check it out. So it's like directly from someone you're already listening to, I think is key.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I think the next thing we can talk about when it comes to marketing is advertising. So, I talked a little bit about in our technical mishap, the Google ad that I ran. And again, I think that got 30,000 views across mobile devices and computers and televisions.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot, but again, from what I can tell, near zero engagement.
People actually listening to the podcast.
People actually is listening to the podcast. Yeah. They listened to the promo,
Right.
but they didn't do anything after the promo ran.
Right.
So I've reached out to Spotify and their ad department. We're going to try and talk to them maybe next week and see about running an ad for the Strange Chronicles, the teaser that you just heard in the last episode, running that on Spotify during podcasts specifically.
Oh, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, I've heard ads for other people's podcasts, and if it sounds interesting to me, I definitely give it a listen.
Yeah, and that's really the goal, right? Is to get more listeners and more subscribers.
Totally.
All right, that finishes up the marketing bit of this episode, and now it's time for our podcast tip, something that we learned to help you make your journey easier.
And the podcast tip for today is make transcripts for your episodes.
Yes, this is a good one. You knew in doing a podcast that it helps people find it when there's more information attached to it.
Right.
And some of that information is chapter markers, some of it is transcripts.
Yes. In my research for the podcast, I had read that the algorithms pay attention to words and hashtags and descriptions, so that having a transcript is only more information for the algorithms to have about your podcast.
Yeah, so when people search up those words, it makes it easier for them to find it.
Exactly.
So in the scripted podcast, that's not going to be an issue, right? Because you already wrote the script and we're reading the script and performing the script.
Correct.
So all we have to do is take what you've already written and upload it. But when it's something like Making the Strange, where we're just going off the cuff, you have our outline for us that we're working off of, but we say a lot of words that aren't on the page.
Sure.
So there's no transcript. And transcripts can be expensive. Getting them done is like...
So what's our tip? How did we do our transcript?
We took our WAV file after we exported it when we were finished with the post, and we brought it into Adobe Premiere, and that's their video editing software. When you bring it in there, there's this nifty little function where you can click on the audio file and it will automatically transcribe the audio for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And if you already have the software suite like we do, it's at no extra cost to you. So the AI goes through, interprets what you said, you do a quick read through. Yeah, the words look like what we said. You can name the speakers, it differentiates voices, and within a couple of minutes, boom, you have your
Does it format
transcript
it
ready
in
to
some
go.
sort of way, or?
Yeah, you can output a transcript file. You can output it as a text file. You can output it as a CVS file or CSV file. I forgot what it was.
Which one
didn't
did
do
we
that one.
use?
I used a text
Okay.
because in Buzzsprout, it allows you to attach your transcript through one file type that we didn't have, or just copy and paste text. So outputting it to a text file allowed me to do that.
Great.
Yeah, bing, bang, boom, and we were done. Well, that's it for this episode of Making the Strange.
We want to thank you for tuning in to our journey in creating a fiction podcast, and I hope that it can inspire you to create your own story, because we believe that everyone has a story to tell. Please email us with any podcast tips or questions you might have at info@thestrangechronicles.com.
Thanks for listening. You can follow us on Instagram at Making the Strange and at The Strange Chronicles Podcast. Be on the lookout for The Strange Chronicles, a sci-fi detective fiction podcast coming this Halloween. Until our next episode, I'm Chris.
And I'm Jennifer. Keep it strange.
This has been a Kings of Content production.